Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful tutorial, we're trying to explore a very nice feature of Streamlit, the file upload, right? So we're going in depth into it. So we'll be building something, then we'll be exploring what we can do with it. So let's go back to this app. So this is a very simple app which allows you to be able to upload an image or the various file formats, and you're going to see how it works. So I'll come back here now, upload a simple image. So let's upload this particular image here, which is a JPEG image. I've already done, but I'll drop it again. If I drag and drop it, it's going to analyze it. It's going to give us the file name, right, which is the same name here, the image, the type, then the size, which is the same size here. And if I scroll down, you can see that the image has been processed and then the file has been rendered, right, as an image. Very nice. If I go back to the sidebar, we can also have options for working with dataset, that is CSV, which is a very common file that we work with when building data science apps. And then document files, that is PDF, Docx, and the rest. So let's check for the datasets. Go back to the dataset here. Then I can now drag and drop a CSV file. So let's drag and drop a CSV file here. If I drag and drop a CSV file, it's going to analyze it, identify it. Then if I click on the process, it's going to give me the details, right? The name of the file here, the type, and then the size, which is the same size here. Then the data has been displayed, right, in a very nice format. One thing about this is that if I drag and drop any file that is on the CSV, it's going to give us a warning. So let's paste in a PDF file here. If I paste in a PDF is not CSV, so it's going to give us a warning, right? So that is something very simple. So it's giving us an application one. Very nice. So that is all out of the box with Streamlit. So now let's go back to the other side. In case you're working with another file format like TXT file, in case you're working with files like PDF and then Docx, how do you do that? So I'll drag and drop them. So I'm going to drag and drop a Docx file here. If I click on it, I drag and drop it here. You can also browse it, right? It's going to analyze it. Then if I click on process, it's going to process it, the file name, right? The particular file type. Then it's going to give us what was written on it. Very cool, right? It is using Docx, right, as you can see. I can also put in a TXT file. So let's copy a TXT file. This is the same thing, the same text on it. I'll drag it here. So to analyze it, so it's changing it. Then if I click on the process, it's going to process it. It's a test plain file, and then the test has been rendered. Very cool. Moreover, I can also work on a PDF file. So let's drag and drop a PDF. Hopefully it's able to open well. I drag and drop this PDF file here. Going to analyze it, process. It's going to give us our result, and this is it, right? Very cool. So that is something very nice that we can do with a file upload. So we're trying to see how to work with it. So let's recap and start from scratch. So there's a simple image to help us understand. So with a file upload, it gives you the option of uploading any type of file, right? So if you upload any type of file, it can be an image, can be a CSV file, it can be a TXT file, a Docx file, PDF file, audio file, MP3, any file that you want. You can upload it on Streamlit, right, using the st.file upload option. So after it has been uploaded, it's going to be converted into this particular class, which is a subclass of byte.io, right, like a byte file, which is a file-like object. So it's going to be seen as a file. So any place that you would use a file, that is the same way it is being appeared, right? I'm going to produce an upload file class. Perfect. That is the first thing. Now, after it is in this particular format, your task is to pick the particular type of file reader, right, to read it, right? That is where sometimes the issue may come. So in case you uploaded an image, it's going to be in the format of an upload file class, which is a byte.io subclass, special class made by Streamlit, which is like a file, right? So in case it was an image, you would have read it using Pillow or OpenCV, right? So that's what you'll be using to read that particular file that you have uploaded. If it's a CSV, you just use pandas or CSV to read it. If it's a text file, you are going to use a different format, right? So either you read it as, you just go with .read, there's going to be read in a format of a byte file, or you just process it with a string IO, right? And if it's a document file like Docx file, you can use several packages like Python Docx or Python to test or Docx to test to read it. If it's a PDF, right, you're going to also use PDF, PyPDF, PDF Plumber, all of the various tools like PDF Mole, and then PDF Miner, and then Test Track. So that is how to read it. So the first thing is you upload your files. irrespective of the particular file type, it's going to be converted to this particular format, right? Which is a file like subclass called upload file. Then you are supposed to pick the right file processing tool or library to open it. So if it's image, you use Pillow or OpenCV as an example. If it's a CSV file, you use Pandas or CSV. If it's a text file, you can use this particular option. You can use this particular option, right, to read it in case it's a text file, right? st.write. So the st.write on a file uploaded.write is going to bring it out. So the st.write is a very powerful function, so to process it for you, or you can just use the str or the string IO, then respectively. So let's see how to build this particular app, right, from scratch, having understood the concept. I'll go back to where my app is and let's work on it. This is the old one, so I'll be closing this particular one so that we start building some stuff from scratch. Right, so I'm going to make a folder here and I'm going to call it as a file uploader app, right? Then inside my file upload app, I'm going to create a file called app.py, and I'm going to use Sublime to open that particular file. Perfect. So this is an empty file, so I'm going to paste in the basic stuff, then work on it. This is something very simple, so I just pasted in the code, right, to make it easy, because these are something basic that we have been doing all the time. Perfect. So let's run this particular app that we have and see how it works, right? These are simple stuff. We just created a choice to work on it. Right, so this is going to be just the skeleton of the app, right, to save us time, because this is something we have been doing all the time. So I just come back and now work on it. This is where the app is. I'm going to run it with Streamlit, run app.py, right? So let's write some code whilst it's opening. So what I'm going to do is that we'll be working on the first aspect of the app, working on this particular one, right? So we'll be first of all seeing how to create a session to receive all of these individual files. Then we will move on to how to process them in case it's an image, in case it's a CSV file, in case it's a TST, Docx, and then PDF, right? So that's the steps we'll be taking. So let's see how to work with this. So the home is going to be for the image. So let's write some code on it. So that's open for us. So I'll copy this URL and then I'll open it inside my browser. Okay, so once it's open, let's see what you have done. Right, so you can see that it has already uploaded perfectly well. So I pasted it here. So that is something. So let's start building some from scratch. So we're working with a file upload. So I'll call it as my image. On to be the file image the rest of them. So as we learned earlier on that we can open an image with Pillow or with OpenCV. So let's go to this image file, right? Then I'm going to go to st.file uploader, right? Then it's going to take the label. So let's go to this upload images. Then it takes the type. So the type is the particular file that you want to accept. So we are using PNG. We are accepting only PNG. We are accepting JPEG, right? JPG and then JPEG, right? So these are the only files we are accepting. Very simple. So if I save this, it's now going to run it and then bring it here for us. So that is the basic understanding. Let me make it like this so that you can see it all. So it takes the label. Let's go with always run. It takes the label, right? The particular label we want to show, then the type of file that you want to accept. It's going to create a drag and drop out of the box. Very simple and very cool. So after that, now let's explore this particular stuff, what it does. So as we learned earlier on, anytime you create this drag and drop option, it's going to receive any file, then convert it or make it in the format of upload file, which is a file like byte.io subclass, right? So you need to pick the respective file processing library to be able to process it. So that's what we're trying to do here. So that's finished. Now let's see how it works. I'm going to say that if the image file is not none, that is if it's not empty, I want you to process it. So let's see what it gives to us. So we're trying to see the details. So let's make it like this to see details of how the file comes about, right? So let's go to st.write. Then I'll just go with the type of it, then the image file. So let's check it out. So I'm going to drag and drop an image here. So I'll drag these images here. So let's go back to this place, our app itself. I'll drag it here. So if I drag it here, you're going to see that it's uploading it. Then it's going to show some very simple information, right? So it's giving us this particular image. Then you see that the class here is called uploaded file, right? So that is the type of class, right, for that particular thing that you upload, whether it is PNG, JPEG, or any other file format you're going to use inside the upload option. So this is a class it's going to be. It's a subclass of byte.io. Okay, that is the first thing. So let's explore it out to show whatever thing that this particular file comes. So this is the type, right, that we have. Now let's check the basic stuff. So st.write, then dir the image file. So if I run it like this, it's now going to list all the various things this particular file has. That is going to be the methods and attributes. So methods and then attributes, right, of that particular class. So let's expand it and see what we have so far. So if I check it out, you can see that it's a class, right, and it's having some basic stuff. These are basic stuff. But if you come here, you can see that we have close, detach, file number, flash, get buffer. Like when we are trying to work with byte.io, get value, we have ID, we have the name. So this name is the name that appears here, this particular name here, right? And then we also have the size and then the file type. So if I come down here, you can see that we have the read, in which you can convert it to bytes. We have the name, we have the size, we have the type. So we're using type, size, and then name in this session to get the particular type. So I'll come back and then hide this one out. Then let's create a file detail. So file details, which is going to be let's create a dictionary, which is going to be the file name, right? So the file name is going to be the uploaded file, right, dot name. As you saw here, there was name here, so that's what you're picking. The next one is going to be the file type, and as you can see, we had type here, so it's going to be the uploaded file image dot type. Then the last one was, let's use this one, size. So the size is going to be file size, so file size, which is going to be the image, which is uploaded file dot size. So if I save this one and then let's bring it out, st.write the file details, and let's check it out. So this thing that we have done, let me hide here. This thing I've done is going to give us the same information that you are getting here. So this is the file name, which is the same thing, file name here. This is the size, which is this particular one here, and then the file type, right, which is the particular file type accepted. So that is a basic overview of the upload, st.file upload, right? So it's going to, with that same thing, in case you want to get the actual file name, you just go with this option, file name, file type, file size, using the attribute, right, as we have seen here. So we have the uploaded file dot name for the file name, dot type for the file type, dot size for the file type. So we can use this type option to specify the particular tool to read your uploaded file, right? So that is the simplest stuff. Now, since this is an image, we are trying to, how do we open an image? You can use Pillow, you can use OpenCV, you can use scikit-image, any of these files, because it's coming as a file-like object, right? So this is a type, it's a JPG type. Okay, so let's create a simple function to read images. This is going to be loading images, right? It's going to be using Pillow. So there are several packages that you can use to help us open files. So let's call that my file processing packages. So for image, it's just going to go with from Pillow import image. You can also use OpenCV, right? Perfect. So I come back here, then I'm going to create a function to load my image. Then this one is going to take the image file, right? Then I can just go straight away and then use Pillow to open. So image dot open. This is like a file like object, so I'll pass in my image file. Perfect. And now I can return it out. So return that image. That is something very simple, right? So let's see how to read it. So I can also put st cache there to make it faster. So st.cache, that's one of the ways we use this cache. So I'll come back down here and then I'll display that particular image here. So it's going to be st.image using Streamlit image, then I pass in my load, the image, then the image file. So this, remember that this is an upload file type, right? It's a file like object, so we are just using OpenCV. We're just using pillow rather to open. Now it's going to give us our result. So it's taking some time for it to load because the first time, then after that it will just be fast. So now it's giving us our image, very huge image, right? There's a church somewhere in the world. Okay, so let's reduce the size because the size is too big. So I just come back here and then I'll give a size of the width of, let's say 250, and then the height of 250. That is all, right? So this is going to reduce it to make it smaller. At least it's better for the user. So that is working with file upload concerning images, right? So I can upload any format of image. This was a JPG, as you could see the type. I can use a different image. Now let's move on to the next section. So let's recap on this, what we have done so far. So what we did is that we just uploaded an image into our file, then it converted it to an upload file. Then we are using pillow to open that particular file like object that was uploaded, and we saw how to get the name, the size, and the file type. Now let's move on to CSV, which is another common file format that we use. So I'll come back to the same place, and it's going to be like this. So this, I'll call it as my data file, right? Then st.file uploader. I'll give it the label, so upload a CSV. If you are just collecting only CSV, then the type is going to be CSV. Let's put at the list. So CSV, right? Or CSV. Perfect. It's going to only accept CSV. Then, as we did above, I'm going to say if the data file is not none. If it's not none, then we can also bring it out, right? So it's going to also do the same thing because it's coming as less st dot, right? The type of this data file is coming as a class of uploaded file class, right? So let's go back to the sidebar here. I'm going to go to the datasets option, which is CSV files. It's going to tell us the option. So let me drag and drop in a CSV file, the one we use for the example. So I'll put it here, and then from here you can see that it's giving us the class, right? So any file that you upload with the file uploader is going to always return this particular class. So it is up to you to use and pick the right file processing library to open it. Perfect. So that is one. Now let's come back again, and then since it's a CSV, it is very simple to read. CSV can use pandas or can use data table, anyhow you want it to be. So let's use pandas. So I'll come back to the top of my file and upload my or import my file processing library. So pandas as PD, right? Then you can also use data table if you want. I'll come back here, then just go straight away with my df. It's going to be pd.read underscore csv my data file, right? Then now I can bring it out st.data frame my df. That is something simple. So let's, just as we did above for the title and the details, let's do the same thing here. So I'll come back here, put it here. So what I'll be changing inside this place is that we call it as data file. So I'll change this one from image. This is no more an image. This is a data file. It's a CSV file, right? So data. Perfect. So it's going to bring us our result and then the details. So let's open it, maximize it. Then you can see that it's given us a class upload file, as we said. The file type is a file that you uploaded here. The test, there's a type, the type of file is a test file, but it's specifically a CSV file, and then the size, right, which has been converted here. And you see that it's displaying our data frame. Very cool, very nice. That is how to work with CSV file, right? Now let's move on to how to work with TXT file and then Docx file and PDF. So the same concept, you have to pick the right file processing library to open it. Okay, so these ones are easy. The first two we have done is easy, but the remaining one is when you can have a lot of problems. So let's check that one out for here. So this is going to be for the file that you're working on. So it's going to be I give it any particular name. So let's go to Docx file st.file uploader. Then I'm going to say that upload file, right? Or let's call it upload docs file or upload document. That would be better, right? Then this is going to take a type. So let's come down. So this type we are accepting only PDF, right? And then I want to also accept docs, right? So I can make it small PDF. It's still going to work, docs, right? And then let's accept a TST file. So these are the three types they are accepting. Then as we did above, we're going to say if my docs file is not none, right? So here you can also actually bring a button. You can bring a button to help you with that. Instead of, you can bring a button here, which is going to be like if st dot button, say process, to avoid errors, right? Something like this. Then let's index it all. So if docs file is not none, if it's not none, then I want you to pick the particular library to help us. So I'll just do the same thing we did above, the file details, to get the file details. Because since, let's go back, pass, and let's see what you have done. So I'll come back to the document file option. So inside this document file option, it's telling us that we can accept PDF, docs, and then TST, right? Perfect. You can also change the limit in case you want. But if I upload a particular file here, for me to be able to pick the right library, I'll be using the file type, right, to help us. So if I come back and I drag in this PDF file here, it's going to identify that this is a PDF, right, and the size. So I want to be picking the particular file type, so that if I process it, I'll be able to get use the right tool based on the file type to read it. So how do we do that? So now we'll be using what we did above, right? So if you're going to be using the file details to help us find it out, right? So that's what we're trying to use. I'll just copy the same thing as we did, because it's the same thing we've been doing to get the particular file details. So bring it down here, right? So this is using, I called it a docs file, so I'll change this one from data file to docs file. See how the naming makes our work easier, right? Perfect. So that is all. So it's going to tell me the particular file type. So if I come back here and I check it, if I click on the process, it's going to give us our result, right? Perfect. And you can see that this is, you check here, it is application/PDF. So let's try a docs file. Office docs, right? It's going to change it. If I click on process, it's going to give us example 2, right? The file name, the type, application, open XML format. So this is a particular type of file, right? So the same thing if I go and I paste in a test file, TST file, it's going to tell me that it's a test, but it's plain, it's not CSV. If I go back and I click on process, it's giving us test plain, right? So we are using this particular file type option to pick. You are picking the right file to open it, right, using the file type. So that is what you are trying to do. So this is useful in case you are building a lot of app or an app that receive different files. So let's bring it to the right side and let's explain it all, right? So that is something very simple. So what you are doing is, now we are in this session, right, working on this session. So we want to pick the file type, then you pick the corresponding file processing library to read it, right? So if I pick a docs file, I'm going to use these ones to read it. If I pick PDF, I'm going to use these ones to read it. That is what you'll be trying to do. So I'll come back here, then I'm going to come back and say that if the docs type, right, docs file dot type is equal to, if it's equal to, as we said, it was application, and let's use first tst file test/plain, right? Remember that when we uploaded a tst file here, it gave us test/plain, right? So if it is that particular one, I want you to read it. So this is where sometimes you may have issues. So the first way is that if you can read it as bytes, right? Because it's a byte IO subclass, right? So I can read it straight away with this option. So st dot, let's take that particular file, let's call it raw test, right? Then docs file dot read, right? If I go with this, it's now going to be reading as bytes, right? So this is going to read as byte. So now since it's reading as byte, I can just go st dot write, and then it's going to work and give us our result only with the write. So let's click on it, process, giving us the details of the file, and you see that the text that is on it has been given, and you can see from here that this byte, the B here stands for byte. Perfect. With the write, it will give you as byte. That's something you have to notice about. If I go the same thing, I do st.test, it's not going to work. It's going to render it as B. So let's check it out. So I check it out, that this give us B, right? It's not process it well, right? So that is something you have to know. When you are reading a TST file, you must always go with, by default, the uploaded file dot read, and then st.write is going to process it and bring it as a byte that you can read, right? But if you go with st.test, st.html, st.markdown, no, not markdown, test title subheader, is not going to work. It's going to come out as you want it to be, right? So let's go back and then see how to actually read it so that doesn't give you this. So we have to process it not as byte but as the write format, like a string. So you can use the string IO format, but you can just check the docs for that. So this doesn't work, right? This, right, it's working, but it's not working as expected. So let's hide this one out. But this one works. This one works, but in bytes, right? Perfect. So let's see the right way to read it. Another way you can also read it. So this is going to be this option. So I'm going to call it as, it's going to read as string, right? So this is actually decoded. I've decoded the byte to string, right? So how do we do that? So let me hide this one. Now come back to this same place. Now I'll call it as my raw docs, right? Then string, I'm converting the entire thing to string. Docs file dot read, right? Perfect. Then I'm going to specify the encoding. So the encoding is going to be UTF-8, right? You can use the other way around, but I prefer this one. Now if I go with st.write, it's going to work. Raw test, this one will work. So I come back and I process it. It's telling me some errors. Unbound local reference before assignment. So let's check it out and fix it. So yeah, because of this. So now it's going to work without giving us an error. Click on the process. You can see that it is, it don't give us anything. Let's try it again. So sometimes this is one of the issues, right? So you still fix it. So I'll come back here, upload it, click on process, and then you can see that UTF-8 unknown encoding, right? So the reason it was giving us this error was because we spelled it wrong, right? It's supposed to be UTF, not UFT. That's why it gave us this error. But that is the right way to read it, right? So that is one of the ways. So it's supposed to be UTF, right? Not UFT. So if I come back and I check it out, so now it's working. If I click on process, it's going to render it perfectly well for us. So that is one of the ways of reading it. So let's come back, take off this, upload the file again, put my TST file here. It's going to analyze it, click on process, going to give us the file type. You can see that that's giving us our result, right? So this is one of the simplest way of reading it, right? So we have seen two methods of reading a TST file. So the first one is that you can read it as byte, as we saw here, right? This is going to be the first method, reading it as byte, this one here. Then you use a write to work on it, right? Then the second one is that this one doesn't work in case you're using test. The second one is that you can just take the same file, use and then convert it to a string UTF-8 format, then you can read it. So this one will also work in case I work with this option. So st.test with the raw test is still going to work. So this one works, and this one also going to work, right? But for this one doesn't work, right? This one doesn't work for the byte option unless you convert them to string, right? So let's hide this one and let's check that one out to confirm whether it's working. So I'll come back, open it, process. So let me drag and drop it again. I'll go back, pick it here. Can actually create a function to help you with that, right? So process it, will give us our file details. Then because I'm using TST, see that now the format has changed, right? The format of this has totally changed from the initial one that we had, right? So if I bring or I uncomment this one out, you can see the two difference. So this one and this one, you can see that there are two different results it's going to be given to us if I process my file. So that is how to work with TST files, right? Using just normal Python, right, to read them. Perfect. So if I go back, drag and drop, this is going to be the last, then we move on to the next session, which is going to be the PDF and then the Docx file. So I click on it, let's drag and drop. It's going to analyze it, click on process. You can see that now it's going to give us our result. So the first one is right, st.write. You see the format is slightly different from the one that is using test file, right? Something very simple, something very easy. So I hope you have understood that concept, right? Perfect. So you have seen how to work with images using Pillow. You've seen how to work with CSV using Pandas. You have seen how to work with TST file using the st.write and then the normal option, right, of the string, and then you encode it. So let's see how to work with Docx and then PDF. So to work with Docx is very simple. There are a lot of tools you can use. As we saw in the image, you can use Docx to test, you can use Python Docx, any of them, right? Because these things can be used to read Docx file. So I'll come back here, and just as we did above here, let's hide this one out and work with our condition. So else if my Docx file, the type here, you are still picking the type, is equal to, let's go with we have applications /PDF in case it's PDF, right? Pass, then let's work on the Docx file. So else, you can just go straight away with the file. So let's go to the raw test. Let's go to Docx. So let's import that library. So this library is used to open files. So import Docx to test, right? So you can just install it with pip install Docx to test. It's a very simple library. You can also use testRact, which is like this. So import testRact, right, to open Docx file, right? But let's go with Docx to test, which is simple, very easy to work with. So just come back to this place, Docx to test dot process file. I think it's process. Right? Just process. Now pass in my Docx file. It takes a Docx file, right? So I don't need to bring the dot read, right? It's still going to understand how this is a file. Then it's going to pick it up and then read it perfectly for us. Just like in case you're using Pandas. Very nice. Now I can just go with st.test or write. Any of them is going to work. My raw test. Test, and let's try this one, st.test the raw test, right? So any of them is going to work. So let's save it and let's check it out again. So I'm going to be picking a Docx file, right? That is Windows or Office Docx file. So this example, copy this one here, drag and drop it. Going to identify the type. Then if I click on process, it's going to process it and then give us our result. So this is the result, right? This is too long, that's why I did not put it there. So that has given us the result here, right, as this and then as this, right? Very cool. This is with the write option and this is with the TST format because it's able to process it very well. That is how to work with the second option of the Docx file, right? Using Docx to test. You can also use Python Docx anyhow you want it to be, but this is simple for me. Now let's move on to the PDF. So the PDF is going to be the next option, and then that's going to be the last. So I'll come back here and then work on it. So there are several tools you can use to read PDF. There are many of them, so we'll be using the simplest of them, or one of them, not the simplest. You can use PyPDF. So these are the packages. We can go with PyPDF. So from PyPDF, you can use PyPDF to help you read it, or you can use PDF Plumber, you can use PDF Molar. There are lots. You can even use Testtract to help you with that. So this is going to be PyPDF 2, right? Import PDF, I think file reader, right? It is another package you can also use to read your file. Then you can also use PDF Plumber. So import PDF Plumber. So let's check the first one. So I'll comment this one out. Then check the second one, PDF Plumber, which is very simple. So it's going to be like this. I just come back to the same place. So this was for the text file. This is for the test. This is for the Docx file. Both of them works. So let's make it like this. Works. Right, both of them works. And let's hide the last one. Okay, perfect. So to work with PDF, as we said, we are picking the PDF file. Then what you're going to do is that we'll be using that particular file format to open it, right? So we can just go with try accept, right? So I'm going with PDF Plumber dot open, right? So that is something simple because there is a file. It's going to see it as a file, so you can just open it with straight away. Like in case you're using pandas, you'd have open with read CSV. So open, then the file, right, which is Docx file. That is all, right? That is how to read it. Very simple. So let's wait. Open as, let's say, F, right? Then now I can just read it out. So I can just say I want all the pages, right? But let's make it like PDF so that it saves this. So PDF, so page, so PDF dot pages. So let's say I want the first page. So in case I want to get the first page, I just go just dot right the page, pages dot get, or I think extract test, right? Very simple. Then it's going to extract for us. So if I save it and I come back, so let's close the exception, except in case there is an error. Sometimes I'm supposed to close them, but with the wait context, it's going to automatically close them. Except st.write none, right? Something like that. So I come back here. Let's check it out. So I'm going to drag and drop a PDF file. You can also browse them, right, in case you want, but let's drag and drop them because it's simple. So I come back to pick this particular PDF file, upload them here. Now it's going to identify the file. If I click on the process, you're going to see the details, the name, the type, and application. You can see that's processed them perfectly well. So this is using PDF Plumber. You can also use PDF Reader, right? PyPDF Reader. So this is the simplest way. So let me copy the code for the PyPDF so that and I'll explain it and work on it. So that's also a very common package that most people use. So I just come back to the top of my file and create a simple function for that. So let's work on the PDF Plumber. So this was for PDF Plumber. So let's see how to work with PyPDF. So I'm going to uncomment this one out. Then it's going to be like this. So I've created a simple function to help us with that, and I'll explain. So I'm just creating a function called read PDF, right? Then this time we are not opening the file to read it. We are just passing the file. That's what you have to understand. We are not opening the file. We are just passing in the file because it is a file-like object into the PDF file reader from PDF2. PyPDF2. Then I'm going to count the number of pages. Then I'm going to create a simple string, empty string. Then I'm going to loop through the number of pages and then get all the text and add it to this one. This is one of the ways of reading it. And I'm going to return all the text, right? You can use a list. You can use anyhow you want it to be. So I just come back here. Then I will change this one here. Let's comment this one out. Let's comment this one out. then let's use PDF. Let me bring it down here. So using PDF, so using PyPDF, right, which is a very common library. So I'm just going to do the same thing. So raw test my read PDF. This is a function from PyPDF. Then I pass in my file, so docs file, then st.write the raw test. So let's save it and let's check it out. Hopefully it doesn't give us an error. If it gives us an error, we just use the try except, right? So I'll just come back here, copy a PDF here, and let's check it out. Processing it, so I click on process, giving us the details. It said it's able to read it, but it's not that clear. So let's use a different file option or a different file. So I'm picking this particular file to read it, right? This is one of the courses. So now if I click on process, this is going to bring everything out perfectly well, hopefully. Analyzing it takes some time for it to run. So that is one of the ways. So that's why I prefer a PDF Plumber, right? Because it's very simple. I can use PyPDF, just that you have to change the function. So you can see that now that's given us everything, right? Very, very cool, very nice. So that is how to work with file uploads. So you have seen how to work with file uploads, how to pick different file formats, images, CSV, TST, Docx, and PDF using Streamlit file upload, how to convert it to an upload file subclass, then which is a file-like object. So any place that you send a file is going to be like that. So in case you want to read an image, use these particular respective libraries. If it's CSV, pandas. If it's TST, just use with this option, or you read it with a string, then you encode it, right? The same thing with Docx, and then the same thing with PyPDF, as well as audio files. That is a basic overview of it. So the basic stuff we have learned so far is that you have to, first of all, get your file processing libraries, right, which you'll be using to process them like a file. Then you create your individual functions to work with it. Then you also remember that the file that it comes is taken in a format of this option. It's having a file name, file type, file size, right? So you can actually use a file type to specify which type of file processing library or file processing package you want to use to open, just as we did here, right? So if it was TST, we read it straight away. If it was PDF, we use PDF Plumber or PyPDF, right? And if it was a Docx file, we use Docx. So that is how to work with file uploads. So thank you for watching this tutorial. In case you have any question or contribution, you can just put inside the comment section below, and check the link below for some interesting materials on machine learning, Streamlit, and then more. See you another time. Stay blessed.